red. Ladies in red. Ladies in red. Ladies in red. Discuss the latest news, just fans giving their views. This channel is red. They see the bar and raise it, plus they rep for the ladies. Trust it's red. Female voices in football. Red. If you want to talk up, it's a red channel for me and you. Subscribe and tune into the Ladies in Red.
Hi guys, welcome back to Ladies in Red. I'm absolutely buzzing for tonight's show. As you can see, she's sat there. I've got the wonderful Healy joining me. This is the first episode of our new Women in Sport series that I'm starting, and what a way to start it off. Katie, firstly, thank you so much for joining me. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, Soph.
Absolute pleasure. And like I say, we've got a lot of questions, and I'm sure the chat are going to be throwing some questions your way as well. I'm not going to act like an expert, Katie. I'm not going to be like I know everything about boxing. Which, you know what cracks me up on Twitter? I am going to start with this. You know, whenever there's a big fight, so I know Usyk and Fury are all over Twitter at the minute. Whenever there's a big fight, everyone automatically turns into an expert on Twitter. Like, oh, they need to do the jab more. They need to do this. Like, do you know what I mean? And everyone turns into a professional. I'm not going to be one of them. I'm going to be as I am. As I am. But yeah, I had the pleasure, obviously, of watching you was it 2 weeks ago now? Is it 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, it flies by, doesn't it?
Yeah, with your obviously professional win, and we're going to delve into your career and your journey as a female boxer slash kickboxer. And yeah, I'm just really fascinated to learn more. So let's start nice and easy. Like I say, I'm not an expert, but what got you into the sport in the first place, Katie? Like, what was it that made you think, you know what, I want to be a boxer?
Good question. I think it's just been part of my life for such a really long time. So I started back in kickboxing. I'm 24 now, and I started kickboxing when I was 11. Initially, I got into it more of just a social aspect. I was at school, kind of moved from primary to secondary and stopped doing all of the sports and extracurricular that I was doing. And my dad at work, I think one of his friends were saying that his two daughters did kickboxing and how much they loved it. And he said, do you want to go and try one of the classes? So he took me to a class, and it was kind of one of those things where I did it, absolutely loved it, and was buzzing to go to sessions pretty much as many times as I could. But when I first started, I never thought I'd compete. To be honest, it was one of those things where I just went to the classes. And then I think I was about 15 when I did my first light continuous competition. They called it back in kickboxing. And even though I was sick, believe it or not, actually during the fight, as soon as I went to the corner, I was that nervous. I still loved it, and I think I was hooked from that point. But going into boxing, the transition of kickboxing to boxing, I'd say that it got to the point in kickboxing where I'd achieved more than I ever could have imagined. I picked up 3 world titles, and it got to the point where, thank you, it got to the point where I kind of just achieved what I could, and I felt like I'd hit my peak in it. So took a little bit of a break, 2 years off to go to uni and finish my studies. And then when I came back, women's boxing was booming, and I was watching it on the TV, and I got that itch back. And then I went back to the gym, not knowing if I'd go pro, amateur, which direction to go. And then I guess that kind of leads us up to where we are now. And it's kind of 2 years later, we've gone the pro route and 6 fights out the way now. So I guess that's a bit of a snapshot of where it started and to where we are now.
Yeah, and let's not play this down. 6 fights, 6 wins. Let's add that in there as well. Obviously, I love it. Yeah. Obviously, you mentioned there, and that was going to be one of my questions about the transition from kickboxing to boxing. Like, did you find that really difficult? Because obviously, there's a lot of different skills, you'd say, for each of their own avenues, really. Isn't that so? Was that a really difficult step to make?
Yeah, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It wasn't easy, and I think that the main thing is that you pick up so many habits from doing a different sport. So it was starting from scratch, really. And I've noticed even in boxing, there's such a difference between being amateur and being pro as well. So that was a big decision on its own, and I felt that my skill set that I brought over from the kickboxing, it suited that pro route a little bit better, but it didn't mean that I didn't have to change the way that I stood. I had to have a completely different stance. I had to change the way that I held my guard, the way that I threw my shots. It was honestly like learning a new sport from the beginning. But I think even looking back at my fights now, maybe like my first couple of fights, I could still see that kickboxer in me a little bit. But I think now that we're coming to like the latter parts of my fights so far, I'm starting to see that I am a boxer now and not so much of that kickboxer that I used to be. But yeah, it's not the easiest transition to make.
Yeah, I'd imagine that, like you say, a different stance, like naturally in your head, you're second guessing like everything. Yeah, that must be crazy. I'm going to shout out a few people. So we've got Gaz says, Katie kicks ass, what a nice girl. Thank you, Gaz. Hello to Ravi as well. Hello to Curtis. Curtis says, smash a like, folks, share and subscribe. Please do that. And thank you, Curtis, for the shout out. I appreciate that. And yeah, a lot of love in the chat. Hello to Brush as well. Hope you're doing good. But yeah, obviously this is a completely different show to what we normally do. We normally talk about football. So I am just going to throw this one in there. Do you have a football team that you tend to sway towards, or are you purely boxing?
Well, I'm a Wolverhampton girl, aren't I, Soph? So I say I've got to support the Wolves. I probably don't watch it as much as I do the boxing. It's more so on the background when family's watching it. But yeah, no, I'd say the Wolves. It's got to be.
Fair enough. Now, you mentioned you literally throwing up being sick in the ring. Like, think back, like, your first time you having to step up into that ring. I guess you kind of already lent into that. But like, how would you explain that feeling? Because I always say this. My brother had a little period of boxing as well. He was at Priory Boxing, and he had a little spell. I remember watching him, and as like a family member, watching my brother being hit was like the worst experience ever. Like, I hated it, but loved it at the same time, of course, because I think he won, and I remember like cheering and watching him walk out and stuff like that. Like, I love that side of it. But how is it like from the other side of things? I always say, like, it takes a lot of guts. Like, even if you lose a fight, you're not a loser, because to stand in a ring in the first place, like, it takes some serious 100%. Guts, doesn't it, to do that? Like, what does it feel like doing that? I've always wondered it.
It's a very strange feeling, and I think I've got better as I've got older, and obviously it's got better with experience. But I always live by that motto that if I'm not nervous, like, something's wrong, because it's the way of my body telling me that something's coming and it's getting me ready for it. So I kind of thrive off those nerves now. I love the walkout. It's the most nerve-wracking thing in the world, but I think that's when it all kicks in and it's like, that's it now. I've got to go out there. All the hard work's done. We're going to put on a show. But I'd say the worst part is when I'm in the warm-up area and I'm getting ready to make that move towards the ring. And I literally stand there and I go, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Just for a split second. And then it kind of it drifts off the second that you step in that ring. And when you touch gloves and you have that stare off, it's like, right, it's showtime now. But no, my nerves used to be awful. I used to get really sick. I used to be really nervous. Whether it's because I was younger, I don't know. But when I was in South Africa back last year in July, it was the biggest fight that I'd done so far. And I remember turning around to my coach, Gav, and I was saying, Gav, I'm not nervous. Gav, something's wrong. Something's wrong. I've got no nerves. And he was off to the toilet for a wee every 2 seconds because of how nervous he was. And I was just standing there like, I don't know what's wrong with me. But that's the only time I can say that I wasn't nervous. And I don't know what it was. But all the other fights, it's just normal, isn't it? It's normal to have that adrenaline and that feeling before you go and do something like that.
Definitely. Curtis makes a good point. He said it must be a nightmare to not kick an opponent in a boxing match. There must be an impulse to use the feet. Like, obviously, as a previous kickboxer, isn't that impulse? Do you sometimes like have to like refrain from just giving them a little kick?
Do you know what? It's so strange that when you put those boxing boots on, you just automatically switch off from the kickboxing. I think when I first made the transition, it was funny because I used to do this thing in kickboxing where you feint your feet and you might lift your legs up so that they think there's a kick coming and then you throw the punch. And I did that a few times in sparring, and the people I was boxing had looked down and be like, what on earth are you doing? It worked great.
Distraction.
Exactly. But no, I think it's just one of those things. It's that once I've got those boots on, right, that's it, I'm focused. It's only the hands. And to be honest, I don't even think of kicking anymore. I think I did one kickboxing class last year. I wasn't in a fight camp. I thought I'm just going to go and do it for a bit of fun. And my entire lower body just hurt. I was like, I've lost my flexibility. My hips hurt. My groin hurts. I can't do this anymore. But it just goes to show that when you stop doing something, your body's like, we'll leave that for now. We'll focus on the boxing side.
You literally train now. You're a boxer, and that's it. You have to stick in that.
That's it.
Hello to Melody. Melody, I hope you're doing good. Good evening to Lawbreaker as well. And he said, welcome to the Madhouse, Katie. Hello, Lawbreaker. I hope you're good. And Ravi's got a question for you. He said, how do you feel when you see the crowd cheering you? So when you hear your name being chanted and that, does that spur you on?
It does. It's an amazing feeling. And my last fight was the only home show I've been on. It was the closest to home. All of the others have been a little bit further afield, like somewhere like Sheffield. And then obviously we had South Africa, which was a little bit further afield.
A little bit.
But no, I've got amazing support, and it is when you walk out and you can just hear everybody. It's that feeling of, right, I've got to put on a show now. All of these people have come to support me. I've got to show them why they've came here to support and make them proud. But once again, it's another strange feeling when you go in that ring, because I completely shut off and I can't hear anybody. The only person I can hear is Gav in the corner, and that's it. And I don't know whether that's just over time. I've just kind of got this bit of like is it a muscle memory? I don't know if that links to that, but it's just kind of like fine tuning. I only listen to him. He's the only person I can hear. And I'll have people go, "Oh, did you hear me cheering?" And I'm like, to be honest, I heard.
Yeah, I did.
I was like, yeah, it's kind of when you're in that fight, you focus on that, and then as soon as it's over, you look at the crowd and you can see everyone, and it's another feeling all over again. So it's a difficult one to explain, but it's amazing. That's probably the best way to summarise it.
Yeah. To be fair, as like obviously a footballer myself, I can link to that. Obviously, there's always people who are shouting on the sides and stuff. But I think when you cross that line and you're on the pitch, you do kind of go into a zone, and it's not like you don't know they're there. You know they're there, and that's a great feeling, knowing that people are there. But whilst you're in the action of it, like, you kind of don't hear and see everything, because you're so focused on obviously what you are doing. De Gea United fan first says Katie Taylor is also an amazing person and a champ. We adore her. I'm guessing you're Irish, De Gea. So hopefully Katie can go in the same direction. Go champ. So a very motivational message there for you. But you mentioned like South Africa. So what? Like, that's a crazy place, by the way, for you to go and fight. That must have been an incredible experience. But like, where else? Like, where's your biggest fights that you've had then? So you're 3 times world champion, aren't you?
Yeah, so I did win 2 of the world titles in the UK. One of them was in Kent, I believe, and then the other one was in Warsaw, so it wasn't far from home. But the third one was actually in New York, and that was amazing. Yeah, we went over as a team. There was 4 of us that went, and it was just a brilliant experience. I've never been before. It's a place I always wanted to go, but to go over for that reason as well, it was just kind of the icing on the cake. So yeah, definitely New York, and then obviously South Africa it was fantastic. And another one, it was one of those places I probably never would have gone to if it wasn't for that reason. It wasn't on my bucket list, but it's on mine. Is it? Yeah. Well, I would recommend. It was beautiful, and we went to Joburg. We was meant to go back around this time. Actually, I was meant to be fighting tonight. It is the 20. Is it the 24th today? Oh no, tomorrow. It's meant to be tomorrow, 24th. But that fell through. But that would have been Cape Town. So you never know. That might come back around again. But I'd jump at that opportunity because I've heard it's stunning there.
Well, if you need anybody to come and do some media for you there or anything, just drop in my name. Yeah, why not? Before we go any deeper, because this is one question I need to ask you, because like I say, I'm not going to act like an expert. What is bantamweight? Because obviously I know about like featherweight and whatnot. And for the people in chat who are also asking the same question, I'm hoping it's not just me. What is bantamweight, Katie?
So there's different weight categories in boxing. So I've always worked in kilos, and boxing prefers pounds and stones, but I've always done kilos. So I fight at super bantamweight, which is around 55 kilo. Bantamweight is the one lower, which is around 53, and then you go up to obviously like 57, 59, etc. So in my fights so far, I fought at super bantam. I fought at super feather. So I've fluctuated a little bit, but my main focus is around that 55 kilo region. But I'd like to try dropping to bantamweight, to be honest, around the 53, because there's some really exciting fights around that weight category too, as well as the super bantam and upwards. So it's all about weight categories, and there's only a little difference really for a fighter in between, but it can make such a big difference as well. So you need to make sure that you get that weight category spot on, because if you're fighting too heavy for a category or too light for a category, it can really make that difference as to how your career goes.
Of course, yeah. And Diego, in reference to your career there, said, would you ever consider in the future entering the UFC bantamweight and maybe going up against the likes of Amanda Nunes? Would you ever consider UFC? I mean, you've already switched sports once.
Yeah, I'm just gonna straight up say no. I actually had this conversation when I was watching the UFC on the weekend, and I love watching it. And when I was growing up, even though I did kickboxing, my role model was Ronda Rousey. I loved watching her. I'd watch her fights before I went out for a fight, and I think it's so entertaining. But deep down, I think I'm too much of a wimp for it. I really do. This is why I didn't do K1. And I was like, it's so brutal. And I really respect the people that can do that sport. But I think boxing for me. But I did say that I'd like to give jiu-jitsu a go. So my boyfriend Dan does jiu-jitsu, and I've never been good at floor fighting ever, or like grappling, wrestling, all that. I've never been good at it. But I think it's one of those things that when I eventually retire from boxing, I think that would probably be my next route to go. I'd really like to have a go at that, and because I know nothing about it, I'd be starting from scratch, and I like to learn new things and give myself a challenge. So you never know, I could give jiu-jitsu a go and go, you know what, I'm gonna do one fight in UFC. But right now I can't see that happening. I'll just spectate for that one.
We'll leave that on the back burner for now then.
Yeah,
you mentioned there though, like jiu-jitsu, I remember at school, like I did GCSE PE and we had to do 5 sports, but the school kind of chose, I got to choose 2, which was football, and I think I chose netball, I can't remember, but then the school kind of chose 3. So one of them was like cross country, which I obviously would not have chosen. One of them was like hockey, but then the other one was judo. And I never imagined that I'd be doing judo, but I gotta be honest, I absolutely loved it. And I'm not bragging, but I was all right at it as well. I was good at a little old goshy slam. So if you need any tips, I'm just saying. No, I'm joking.
but I
loved it. I loved it, you know. Honestly, I absolutely loved it, but I never thought I would have. But then when I got into it, I was like, you know what, this ain't bad. I'm glad the school picked it. They got someone external to come in and coaches, and it was really cool.
Good.
Yeah. Hello to Doug. Hope you're doing good. He said, "Who are Katie's boxing heroes? Who have you been inspired by?"
Oh, good question. I think that definitely Katie Taylor. I know that we've mentioned her name in the chat at the moment. I think for women's boxing, she has done so much for the sport. It's absolutely fantastic. And I actually had the opportunity to meet her last year as well.
Wow. Really?
I got invited to a Gymshark event, and I think at the time I was actually in Sheffield for a fight that weekend. And I remember looking at my phone, and I was sitting next to my coach, and I went, I've just had a message from Gymshark. I was like, it looks legit, it looks official, but at the same time, like, what's going on? And I opened it up and I read it, and they did this really great initiative where they invited female fighters that were just starting out in their career, and invite them to this event with Katie Taylor, and you did like a meet and greet, you got to train with her. It was just after one of her fights as well, and we sat down and did like a question with her and her mum. And I must say, she's one of the nicest people I've ever met. She's just so humble, so genuine, but at the same time, she is one of probably the best female fighters I've ever seen. So you don't want to get on the wrong side of her, let's say that. But no, I just think everything she's done for the sport is so inspirational. But then there's just so many out there. Like if I look at the male boxers as well, if we really look back, you've got the likes of like Muhammad Ali, who we still talk about now. He's just a legend in the sport. But I think what the exciting part is that we're seeing so many upcoming fighters that are now becoming really big names that people are looking up to, and especially the women in the sport as well. There's so many females coming into the support that young girls can look up to, and maybe years ago they'd have never even considered going to boxing. They'd have gone and done more girly things as it used to be. But now it's like, no, girls can fight too, and they can fight really well. So I think if I had to give one top name of an inspirational boxer for me, it would definitely be Katie Taylor.
Amazing. No surprises there as well. Like you say, she's a true inspiration. It's quality. And you mentioned about the youngsters coming through there. I remember scrolling through Instagram earlier, and I got RG Box Fit on there. I'm sure you know who RG Box Fit is. And it's got a little hitters class going on. And I looked in the amount of like little girls who were there amongst all the boys as well, doing the little jabs. And I'm talking like toddlers, like really, really young. And I'm thinking like, that's incredible. Like I never really saw that before. So it just shows like people like yourself obviously are really playing a big part in the female sport, and it's really growing, which is great to see, of course, and I love that. But we mentioned earlier about your career and whatnot. Obviously, I saw you fighting 2 weeks ago. 6-0 is the record now. What are your next steps then? Can you tell us any little sneaky points today, like what you got planned?
Yeah, I can probably give you a bit of a sneak peek as to what we've got on the horizon. So I had some news the other day that we're looking at fighting next in May. So it's probably going to be towards the end of May. I think roughly probably a 6-rounder. If anything, I'm my biggest critic when it comes to boxing, and I know that I'm still only at the start of my boxing journey, and there's a lot of things that I want to work on before we go into those really big fights that we want to do. So yeah, it'll be getting me back in there in May, and I had such a big break last year as well. I had from July until March off. So it was great to get back in the ring a couple of weeks ago and kind of dust the cobwebs off. But no, I want to stay really, really active, and then fingers crossed we're looking at a big fight towards the end of the year, which can really kick off 2024 for us.
Amazing. I love it. And obviously to be a boxer, it's not, I mean, I think we've got to be very honest on here and say, look, like both I'm a footballer, you're a boxer, and we also have a day job alongside it as well. It must be so hard. I mean, as a footballer, I'll be honest, like my training is like pathetic compared to that of a boxer. Like obviously I'm good friends with Kirsty Bavington, and I've seen what she does alongside working full time. Like, how do you balance it? How do you balance your lifestyle as a boxer with that as full time job as well?
It's tough. It is really tough. But I think the key to it is just getting into a routine, and that's why I really like the professional side of boxing, because I have the chance to do those fight camps where amateurs, it's even more difficult because they're fighting so regularly throughout the year. It has to be constant training. But for myself, whenever I know I've got a big fight coming up, I do a fight camp determined by how many rounds I've got for that fight, etc. But no, it's early get-ups before work. It's then the big sessions after work. So I'm quite lucky in my job that they're really flexible. So I start work a little bit earlier sometimes when I'm in the office, and then I can finish a little bit earlier so that I can get 2 sessions in afterwards. And I work from home a couple of days a week, which means I can get the road runs in before work and maybe even get a walk in on my break or something like that. So the training is tough. And then obviously there's dieting, which is the worst part of it, because I love my pizza and that has to go when I'm trying to cook weight. But yeah, it's just all about that routine. And don't get me wrong, I think the further up the ladder you go, you can tell the difference when someone's a full-time boxer and if they've got a job on the side. And it might be that further down my career, I have to make that decision. Not there yet, because I love my job. I love both sides of it. I like that when I'm at work, it's work. I focus on that. Don't really think too much about the boxing. I get a bit of a break from it. But then when I'm at boxing, I shut off from work and I forget about it, and then that's it. So it's a nice balance. But yeah, there's bad days as well. It's not all good. There's days where you just like, you feel exhausted, you're drained, but you just have to pick yourself up again and go, well, tomorrow's a new day. So you only live once. You've got to try and do it while you can.
It's all about that mindset. All about the mindset. Leading up to about which part of the training regime do you look forward to mostly, says Diego?
Sparring.
So is there a training, sparring?
Love it. Honestly, Soph, if I could spar every session, I'd love it. Like I'd do that constantly. Believe it or not, sparring is probably harder than the actual fight. Like you was mentioning Bav, I spar Bav quite a lot because she's under the same stable with BCB. And the spars we have, like it's like a fight. It really is. But yeah, I just love it. I think that's the bit where you take everything that you've learned and then you put it into practice, and that's where you really start to see the progress that you're making. Don't get me wrong, you have your bad spars as well. You come out there thinking, God, I feel rubbish after that, or I could have done better. But at the same time, that's where you learn from it as well. You'll get hit in the face and you'll be like, oh, my guard was too low there, or you'll try something out and it doesn't work. So yeah, 100% the sparring. I absolutely love it.
Love it. Honestly, I've seen it on Instagram, like a few sparring videos and stuff, and I'm thinking like, I would be dreadful, like, and don't get me wrong, like for the money like AJ and Fury and all that, I'd be like, you know what, I'd be knocked out by anybody for £1 million, all right, I'd just take it. But like I don't think I could once I step in that ring. I think I'd just run off, like I'd be a right little like sissy girl. I'd just run away. I'd just like that, I just couldn't deal with it. I'd be a massive wimp. But that's what I mean. Like I have the utmost respect for anybody who's got the guts to step in the ring and face an opponent. And then, you know, like obviously with Bav's last fight, and I know she was gutted that she lost, and I'm like, but to me, you haven't lost. Like the fact you've even gone there to do that, like I literally couldn't do that. You have to be so resilient to do that. The training up leading up to it as well. Like, I take my hat off to anybody who does it. I've seen it, like, starting at 4 o'clock in the morning, going on a run, and you got a full work. I'm shattered now. I've already said to you off camera, like, I'm absolutely shattered from my work. I haven't gone for a run before work or done anything after work. I've just slobbed around up until my show, basically. But I'm shattered. So, like, I'll take my hat off to anybody who can do it. It's incredible. But you mentioned sparring being the toughest thing, obviously. But what would you say your toughest fight has been, obviously, throughout your whole career? Is the one where you look back and think, I had to really work to get that?
I think in boxing, one that springs to mind was last April. So I only did a 6-rounder, which usually absolutely fine, cardio-wise, the lot. But the week before the fight, I come down with a really bad cold and I felt awful. And it was one of those where the girl had travelled from a different country and I was like, right, I'm just going to see how I go. I can probably shake it off. I'll be all right. But leading up to the fight, it just wasn't getting any better. And I didn't say anything. I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to let anyone down. And I just remember being in that fight thinking, I can't wait for this to be over. And I got out the ring and my coach was like, are you sure you're all right? Because he kept asking me, like, are you okay? You okay? And I went, no, I'm really not okay. I was like, just get me back to the warm-up room. I was like, I feel dreadful. And I think it was such a difficult fight because I wasn't 100%. And I always say to myself now is that I definitely learned from it, because if I'm not 110%, I'm not going in the ring. It's as simple as that. But yeah, that definitely is one that springs to mind. But I think every fight is so different. Every opponent brings different strengths into that ring that you have to adapt to. So you might watch someone and think, oh, this is going to be an easy fight because they were against a different type of opponent. But then you go in there and you're like, oh, actually, this wasn't what I thought it was going to be like. But no, I think in kickboxing, I had some tough fights as well. And for one of my world titles, I was against someone that was undefeated and they just had... They were really, really good. But no, I think it's just about adapting. That's all you can do, is just being in there, trying to be smart, and just along with your team figuring out what the best way is to beat that person and what the strongest game plan is.
Yeah, very good answer. Hello to Red Devil. Hope you are doing good. We mentioned earlier about the walkouts. Now I'm going to ask you, because I'm a big music fan. And what always gets me, especially when I go to watch the boxing live, I love a walkout. I love a walkout, like the song. Like, I'm always like, what song are we going to choose? I get sometimes more excited for that than I do the fight. And I know it sounds bad, but genuinely, I love it. So I know you're a Beyonce fan. Is that what you tend to go for, that kind of vibe when you walk out?
It has to be Beyonce. And I don't know where this comes from, Soph, to be honest. I've always loved her. Have you got tickets to a tour? I've got to ask you that, because I know everyone's been going mad. Of course I am. I think I contacted about 4 people to try and help me get tickets. And then in the end, one of my best friends, who always manages to get tickets, managed to get me 2. So it's part of my birthday present. But yeah, it's I've always loved her. Like, I grew up with 2 elder sisters who always listened to like Destiny's Child and Beyonce. So I think I just loved her from when I was younger. But yeah, it started in kickboxing, where I noticed every time I walked out to Beyonce, I won the fight. And I think it just stuck in my head because I'd changed my song and then I lost the fight, and I was thinking, something's going on here. So yeah, it's just like my little lucky charm that I take with me. I put Beyonce perfume on before I go out for a fight. And yeah, it doesn't matter what song it is, but it has to be Beyonce. I
love it.
So yeah, and it makes me laugh as well, because Ringside, one of my sponsors, they brought out this like honey punch range, and they put a post up today going, the Queen Bee, because it's like a bumblebee that's associated, referring to me as the Queen Bee. And I was like, oh.
I'll take that.
Yeah, I'll take that. But yeah, no, always got to be Beyonce. Doesn't matter what it is, as long as I walk out to that.
I love it. Hello to Andrew. Big up to yourself. She's always doing so well as a YouTube creator. I appreciate that. And it says hello to Katie as well. And Gaz, she's a Wolves fan. She has just said that she says that it's normally on in the background. She's more of a boxing fan, of course. But if she has to choose a team, it would be Wolves. So that's who you go towards. But yeah, the whole walkout thing, like, I always think, like, if I had to choose a walkout song for myself, like, I don't know, I'd be so scared to choose. Like, it has to be like a hype song for me. It'd have to be like some kind of hype song. But I don't know what I'd go for. I think, like, yeah, that's a big decision before you've even done anything else, isn't it? Really, that walkout, really. Yeah. We mentioned earlier about the youngsters coming through, and you said earlier about how, like, women's boxing is now booming. Obviously, the amount of young girls who are looking up to you guys and are interested, like what advice would you give to any youngster now watching this who wants to get into boxing? Like what advice would you give to them in terms of their journey, really?
I think my biggest piece of advice is do something you love. It's got to be something that you love. And I was so lucky as a kid that my parents allowed me to try so many different sports because I used to do swimming when I was younger, and it got to the point where I'd turn around to my parents and say, I'm not enjoying this, I don't want to do it anymore. And then they'd let me try something else. And then I found what it was that I loved, which was boxing. And I think because I loved it so much, I stuck with it. But I think if you don't love something, you won't put your 110% into it. But I think my next piece of advice would just be give it a go. You're not going to know if you love something until you try it. And I think if I used to look at it this way as well, I'd be so nervous to go and try something new out because I didn't know people. I'd never done it before, but that's the hardest step. I think once you've gone in and you've tried it out, that's a massive hurdle to go over. But yeah, it's one of those things. What's going to happen? What's the worst thing that's going to happen from just going and trying something? If you like it, fantastic. If you don't like it, at least you can say you give it a go, and then you've got no regrets then looking back.
Love that. That's great. Curtis suggested that I go to Dancing Queen, but the thing is, I got my mind would go from the fight. I'd just walk in like acting all tough, and then all of a sudden I'd be like Dancing Queen. Like, do you know what I mean? I'd be the least intimidating person ever. Like my opponent would just be like, is this person real or what? So I'd think I'm out clubbing or something. I'd just change. Like I just don't know.
Imagine is just my mum and my aunties doing like the 1 step, 2 step as you've been walking out.
I just get distracted. I just couldn't. That's why music for me, like maybe I'll just quite silent. Maybe I need like a silent disco. All the crowd can have earphones on and listen to the song, but I can't hear it. I just walk out. Maybe, yeah. Why not? Diego said, I'm sending the memo. Beyonce, please sponsor Katie Healy. There we go. Share it, guys. Let's see if we can get Queen Bee sponsored by Queen Bee. Let's see what we can do.
I've always said that, Soph. I've said that if I had a dream, it would be for Beyonce to write a song specifically for my walkout, and it'd be even better if she sang it as well. So you never know if I get on a big show one of these days.
There we go. When you're selling at the O2, Beyonce there singing for you, or the new Tottenham Stadium. I can imagine that. Yeah, I can picture that. Why not?
I don't know if I'd concentrate though. That'd be the only problem. I've watched Beyonce before, and I literally burst into tears when she came onto the stage. So
yeah, maybe not best just before a fight then. Yeah, emotional wreck trying to fight, but yeah, probably not best timing. ICDC's and ideas. That's what I mean. Look, I'll have to have a hype song, something that gets me going, I think. And big up to Soph for joining Katie, the legend. Thank you, Noah. I appreciate that. Thank you for the support. And we have to talk about it. And obviously, me as a footballer as well, I can have the same comments, really, I'm sure. But as a female in the sport, obviously, it's a male-dominated arena. Like, have you found it tough? Like, has it been very challenging for you to kind of break through, if you like? Because I know me as a woman, like, I've had obviously, especially in the media side of things, since I've started doing YouTube, like, I've had a lot of abuse over the time. A lot of people making like sexist comments, you know, the usual, back to the kitchen and whatnot. Like, is it the same in boxing, like for a woman as well coming through? Like, do you have the same kind of barriers, if you like?
Yeah, I think there is. I've heard a lot of horror stories from others, stories that they've shared, but I'll be totally honest and say I've been so lucky. I've been part of Trojan now for years. I can't remember how many years I've been there, and we've always had a really strong stable of girls there, always, to the point where we used to put on girls' shows. And like you were saying earlier about having so many young girls coming in, you'll look at the kids' classes and there's so many girls there. So I think that I've been so fortunate to always be surrounded by people that have been very, very supportive of that. The odd comment about people saying, oh no, you're too pretty to do boxing, and oh no, girls shouldn't do that. But it's never really fazed me, to be honest. I think I've got such a strong support network that have really been there the entire way for it, that you just shrug the comments off. And even if you see something on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, it just goes over my head. And I think it's definitely helping now that we're starting to see it on the TV. And like when I started my boxing career, women's boxing was already growing at that point. And I think just watching it back, like when I used to watch Ronda Rousey, for example, you'd only ever see like one woman on a card, or you wouldn't see many. But now it's just growing like crazy. But no, I think we're breaking that stigma up now, and like I mentioned earlier, we're showing that women can be just as successful, if not better, at some sports than men as well. But no, it's great to see. And I think even flipping that round the other side as well is that we're seeing men go into sports that are associated with women as well now as well. Like you've seen gymnastics and dances that like years ago men wouldn't have even gone to. So I think we're breaking the stigma with sports now. And like I say, if it's something you love and something you want to have a go at, don't let anyone stop you doing it. Just prove them wrong. That's what I say.
Spot on, and the same motto from me. And I do agree with you. Obviously, you mentioned Katie Taylor earlier, Rosie, and for myself, I could talk about the Lionesses winning the Euros, and women's football at WSL is now on Sky and at BBC. I like showing more of the women's football as well. I think the fact that it is growing, it is getting bigger. More and more men, like you say, are getting involved in it as well. I just feel like now that stigma is kind of phasing out. I know you always say it, like those kind of comments are stuck in the Stone Ages, and they really are. But I think we're moving with the times, and like you're a perfect example of that, of someone who has come through the ranks and is now obviously excelling because of it. And the popularity of the sport is growing, which is fantastic to see. And long may it continue, is what I'm going to say. Obviously, I think it's really exciting to see it. I am going to jump back into the men's just for a current topic, because I've seen it on Twitter today. I've seen it blowing up. Tyson Fury and Usyk. What's your thoughts on that whole debacle? Because I'll be honest, like I've only seen bits of it. I've just seen a clip from Tyson Fury just before I came on air with you, and I was thinking, all right, that seems a bit uncalled for. But do you think that fight will go ahead eventually? Because there's a lot of politics, if you like, isn't there, when it comes to big fights like that?
There's so many politics behind the scene in boxing that people just don't see. That all people see really is that fight that happens on the night. Whether it happens, I really don't know. I was a big Tyson Fury fan, I'll admit, and I don't really know what's going on. And I know that a lot of things can get blown up in the media, and you can read one thing and you can read another. So I tend to kind of just not read into too much until some like official news gets released. But no, I think it's a shame. I think that sometimes other priorities can come into play, like money and things like that when it comes to boxing. But I'd love to see that fight happen. It's one of those that when I seen it announced, I was like, I got excited because I thought it's going to be amazing. And I think it's one that the fans really, really want to see. So fingers crossed they can sort something out in the background. But it's a shame that if obviously the things that are being said on social media are true, but it's one of them, isn't it? There's a lot that goes on in the background that we just don't know about. So fingers crossed 100%. It gets sorted.
I'm like you. Like obviously I'm a big fan of Tyson Fury. Like you say, I like his whole story. I mean, the clip of him when he was lying on the floor and he's like the Undertaker and he just comes back to life. Like, I just find it incredible. His whole story. Now, that's something that I really like. Like, and I'm not like I mainly watch the big fights in boxing, all my close friends and whatnot. So Tyson Fury is always one that I've always been attracted to. Whenever he's been fighting, I'm like, I want to watch that because of his story. Like, I've always found him really inspirational. So, of course, I would love it to happen. Curler said here that it always seems to be one of them fights that just seems to be one of them fighters that don't want to fight. Fury, for me, has been guilty of dodgy moves in this. I don't know the internet, so I can't really comment on it. All I'm saying is, like Katie said, I really hope it does happen. But it's not looking likely at the moment, is it? But I think most boxing fans want to see this fight happen. Hello to Roberto. I hope you're good. You ladies ought to know we've got our best sports athlete in Ireland, the one and only Katie Taylor. Connor, we have had a brief chat about Katie. She's a big inspiration to Katie as well. And she met her not long ago as well, which is incredible. She met her. I can't believe that. Did you get a picture as well?
I did, yeah. We got professional ones done. It's amazing.
Wow, wicked. I'll be framing that. I've been following the UK women's team this year, and I ain't saying this, I'm really impressed with the quality. And I think the quality in all women's sports, because more money's being pumped into it, better facilities, better coaching and whatnot as well. I just think that it is really developing and progressing, which is great to see. And like I say, long may it continue. But Katie, this has been an absolutely outstanding chat. I want to say a big thank you to yourself for joining me. And if you obviously haven't already, guys, please make sure you follow Katie and support her. Katie, let people know where they can find you on socials as well, so they can support you.
Of course. So I'm on Instagram. It's Katie Healy Kiss Kiss. So that's KATIE HEALY. Same name on Twitter. And then I'm also on Facebook as Katie Healy Pro Boxer as well.
Amazing. Make sure you go and follow her. Like I say, support the journey. And Katie, it's been a great chat. Hopefully we can get you on at some point soon. Somebody mentioned earlier, imagine a stream with us two when United are playing against Wolves. I'll think I'll be staying away from Katie, especially if we win. But that maybe could be a bit of content we do in future. And of course, arrange your next fight. I'm happy to get you on and do a bit of promo for your next fight, of course, as well. But thank you for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I felt like we could talk for hours. I've loved that. Yeah, and I hope you've enjoyed it too. Big up. Great. Big up to everyone in the chat. Please make sure you hit a like on the video for my amazing guests, and obviously hit the subscribe button if you are new as well. And you all know me, Soph on Twitter, Soph with a kiss on the end of it on Instagram, and of course Ladies in Red on YouTube. But yeah, massive thank you to Katie. I can't say thanks enough. I've really enjoyed it. And guys, enjoy the rest of your evening. I know England are playing shortly against Italy, so hopefully we can get the win there. But until next time, share this video so people can check out Katie's journey as well. And I'll see you all soon. Take care, guys, and have a lovely, lovely evening. Cheers.